Record on the computer, it's recording. So, everybody in the class, this is part of your final exam. And this is Carlos Gonzales, who used to be a student of mine, who is now a good friend, and who is a business agent, which he'll explain what that means, with the Teamsters Local 1932. He's very active, and we're going to just chat a bit and get you some more information. So, first of all, welcome, Carlos. It's always good to see you. And I'm so excited that you're willing to participate and share everything that you can in 15 minutes with my class. And the first thing I know I asked you to talk about is like, how did you get involved in the union? What made you decide to be a union member? You know, like this, how did you get to where you are now?
Well, hello, Gosha, and hello, class. And anything for the greatest teacher that I've ever had in my entire life. So I'm honored to be here and honored to be a part of this class. And I'm honored too that Coach asked me to do this. So how I got into the labor movement was interesting. I like these stories, these aha moments of this is what I want to do. So I was 17 years old, working in a warehouse in Southern California. I was a high school dropout. So I was like, I need to find work. So I went, and I knew my dad was a union worker and he worked in a warehouse. So I kind of knew that, hey, finding a union warehouse job is a good job. So I came across one, applied, and I got hired. Didn't really know much about the union. I just knew it was a union shop. So first thing my dad tells me is you need to read your union contract. That's the Bible of your workplace. So, and I said, okay, great. First question is, what's the union contract? He's like, it's an agreement between the employer, the workers, and the company. And I said, okay. So I'm reading. It has all these rules and regulations, and I just got into it, started doing my work. Turns out I started as a part-timer there. I was supposed to work 4 hours a day, and that was it. I wanted to work more because obviously, you know, I wasn't going to school, but that's what they told me I was going to be a part-timer. Turns out I was working 10, 12 hours a day. Oh, you know, probably 60 hours a week. And this warehouse had about 200 something people there. And it turns out 95% of them were all part-timers.
Ah, like FedEx.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So as reading through my contract, I noticed there was language in there, a section that the union and the company agreed on that said if you work more than 40 hours in a week regularly, you'll be entitled to medical benefits. So I said, great. So I go to HR with all my paycheck stubs and I'm ready to go. And I think it's as simple. I walk in and I said, hey, I bring out the contract and I said, I'm here to sign up for my benefits. Here are my paycheck stubs. And I literally got laughed at. And they're like, yeah, that's not going to happen here. This is HR telling me this isn't going to happen. I said, well, this is what the agreement says. Yeah, we don't do that. And I was like, okay. So I go home and I'm like, what do I do? My dad goes, oh, well, you got to go file a complaint with the union, which is a grievance. And I said, okay. So I call the union rep and he's like, oh, you got a legitimate complaint here. We're going to go ahead and process this. We're going to make the argument for you on behalf of you, the worker, to the company. So I do that. A couple of days later, the plant manager calls me in his office and he says, hey, I see you filed this grievance. And that's what it's called, the complaint. It's called the grievance. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I'll tell you what. I'm going to make you full-time if you drop this grievance. I'm 17 years old, and I'm just like, okay. And then he goes, I go, but what about everybody else? He goes, don't worry about everybody else. You worry about yourself.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And looking back on it, that was my aha moment. And I was like, I can't do that. I didn't really have a relationship with my coworkers, but I knew it was wrong. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. He goes, okay, fine. Next day I come in, everyone's working 8+ hours except for me, I'm working 4. So 17 years old, I'm paying rent. I'm actually in the process of moving out, getting my own place. This is 1996, so it's a little different era back then. Mm-hmm. And I'm like bummed out. I'm like, dude, what am I going to do for income? I got a car payment. I'm paying rent here. I'm doing all these different things. I'm paying insurance. And I don't have the means to a full-time job. And that was their punishment to me for proceeding with the grievance. Well, the union fought the case. Eventually, 95% of the warehouse all became full-time. So at that moment, I was like, that's when I seen this is the process that works. That unity and worker power has the ability to stand up to big business and win.
Yes.
And these individuals now, and many of them I still see till this day, they work full time. They're still working at the same company. They've bought homes. They've sent kids to college, and they've had medical insurance through that whole process.
And they're they are middle America.
Middle America.
Without the labor unions, there's no middle America, because you wouldn't have all those benefits.
Correct.
Wow.
And that was my aha moment. And I said, okay. And so after that, everyone in the warehouse is happy. They're like, we're going to make you our representative here on the shop floor. So I'm like,
you got recruited.
Great. So I got elected, and I'm like, what the heck does that mean? What do I do now? Because I have no clue. So, my mentor, Carlos Frescas, who has since passed on, took me under his wing. And he basically, I met with him in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, and he showed me what it was to be a true trade unionist and to be an advocate for working men and women. And that's how I started my career. And at the young age of 23 years old, there was an opening at the local, and he advocated for me to go work there. Now, 23 years old now, looking back, I was extremely young to be doing this job.
Yes.
And I'm fortunate because I learned a lot through a lot of trial and error, but he saw something in me that was like, this guy can do it.
Yeah.
And I forever will be thankful for him for that. But that's how I got started in the labor movement. And here I am, almost 20 something years later, working for the Teamsters union here in Southern California. And it's been a great ride.
Well, I tell you, I follow you on your Teamsters page, and I see you're out there. So you've changed, as I said right before the interview, the business agent. You've changed the view of when I first knew the Teamsters, what a business agent was, into a real activist. You're an activist. You're a labor activist. I see you out on picket lines. I see you teaching classes. I see you bringing new people in and making them understand about unions. And it looks like that's the way the Teamsters are moving more and more. That's exciting. We just studied the Patco strike and the Reagan thing. And, we know that in the class that it was the Teamsters who voted for Reagan. And it was with, I think,
Jackie Presser.
Jackie Presser, yeah, because I even showed that movie in one of my classes. So Jackie Presser and the Patco folks who got won over by Reagan, and that caused a major split. But now everyone is becoming more unified in the AFL-CIO, including with the SEIU and the what's the other, higher union. So we're really coming together more. Well, do you see that? Oh, that's what I said. What inspired you to work? You told me that. And do you think, well, let's move right on into, do you think the unions are still necessary? Because a lot of people think that now that we've gotten all these
laws,
I'm short now, but that's okay. Now that we've gotten all these laws, people think, well, what do we need unions for?
Yeah, no, I hear it all the time. Well, I don't need a union. We have all these different laws. And we as unions, and I can speak for the Teamsters, and, I'm going to elaborate a little bit on the whole PACO thing and us endorsing Ronald Reagan, which I'm not proud of everything the Teamsters did. They were against Cesar Chavez and trying to do sweetheart agreements. And there was a lot of dark history in the Teamsters, a lot of positive and a lot of dark.
But they started off really positive. Even if you watch the movie Hoffa, the very beginning of what he was doing.
Absolutely.
So we just got lost a bit. And a lot of the unions have got lost a bit. So
absolutely. And that's unfortunate. And, the necessary of a union now is, I always tell my members, I said, we don't have rights unless we enforce them. I hear about all these labor laws. These labor laws are going to protect me. Unless you're protected by a union contract, you're an at-will employee. An employer cannot fire you for the color of your skin, but they can fire you for the color of your shoes. And there's really not much you can do about it.
Oh, that's good. That's
And,
really
and,
good.
and it's unfortunate. And what the union does is it allows workers to have a voice in the workplace,
Right.
because most of your workers don't have the means to go hire an attorney to fight an injustice that's going on in your workplace. They just don't.
Right.
And where the union has not just the financial means, but more importantly, that any attorney will never have solely, I don't care if he's a Harvard attorney, Yale, he went to all of them,
Mhm.
doesn't have worker power and solidarity.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, that's what the employer fears. I always tell people the Teamsters is, it's one of the most well-known unions in the country.
absolutely.
Sometimes an intimidating reputation, or people like, oh, the Teamsters are here. I wish I could tell you I was the smartest guy and I just walk into a room and voila, it all happens. Or I throw the Teamster logo on the desk and say, give me what I want. These workers. Doesn't happen that way.
No.
You got to create worker power.
Right.
And once you have that solidarity and that unity, that's where that power comes from, no matter what organization you're a part of. So the laws that were created, the unions, we've all done a poor job of patting ourselves on the back and telling America that the reason these laws exist is because of us. So, but we're working on that now.
Good. Good.
Even as an organization, I think, and as a labor movement. So, you know, when a union organization happens, or a union organizing drive happens in a workplace, the one thing that the employees have the right to do is form a union. But the one thing that is overwhelming in these campaigns is fear. Fear of losing your job, because that's how you support yourself and your family. It's that fear that the employer then hires a union buster to come in for a month and pays them $300,000 for a month's worth of work to scare you, the employee, I'm sorry, into not joining the union.
Right. Right.
And they tell you, oh, you're going to pay these exorbitant amount of union dues. Since when does the company care what you pay in union dues? They don't care what I give to my church. They don't care if I belong to the Lions Club or the VFW and I pay dues to them. The reason they care that if you're paying dues to a union is because we're not asking for the whole pie. We just want a small piece of that pie. We want what's right. We want what's just for the working people. And that's where that fear comes in from. The law doesn't protect you or help you to overcome your fear. There could be all these laws on the book, but if you're afraid to go to your boss and say, you need to apply this law to me, then where are you? And if you are that person that's brave enough to do that, kudos. But if you do it by yourself and your boss tells you there's the door,
Yep. There.
you're fighting from the outside looking in now with no income.
Right.
No income. So that's what the union does. It builds that solidarity. It builds worker power. And it essentially it built, I don't like the term middle class, the working class. It built America to what it is today, where people can afford to buy a home. And obviously, all that's getting more difficult now. They can afford to buy the car. I'm going to use this analogy real quick because it irritates me when people talk about Detroit. Oh, the unions destroyed Detroit. It went away because they were getting paid $35 an hour and they had these huge pensions, and Ford and GM had to pay them, so they went to these different countries. The Ford truck that's built in Mexico, they're probably paying that poor worker maybe $5 to $10 a day. But that price of that truck did not drop. It
That's
actually
right.
increased.
Absolutely.
It
Thank
increased.
you.
And it's because these companies said, we're just going to get more profit. When in reality, they could have paid these workers. Detroit would have been this thriving city. The American economy would have been a lot stronger because you have workers making a lot more money and spending more money, buying homes, fixing up their homes. That's how the economy works.
That's how it works from the bottom up. It doesn't work from the top down.
Right.
It works from, if I'm making money, guess what I do? I
Spend
it. I don't put it in the savings account.
Right.
You know, I send my kids to school. I buy better food so I'm healthier. I pay my insurance bill. I pay my mortgage. I buy a new car. It all goes out and it keeps everything moving. And I'm really glad you're mentioning some of this, simply because, like I told you earlier, we did this whole history, and you know, you look back at the IWW, you look back at the early union people when it was considered a conspiracy and they went to jail, when people were killed for being union. That's still happening in Mexico and a lot of Central American countries, and in Africa where unions are starting to come up, and in Jamaica where people are being killed for being union leaders. And people go, wow, they did a lot for us. But it's not like they did. We have to keep on doing it because
Right.
the country is made for the wealthy, and
Absolutely.
their profit margin, they have to make sure that their board of directors or their the stockholders make enough money. So who do they squeeze? The workers. And if you're not in a union, and a good union that will stand up for you, and who makes a good union there, if you would just say that and then go on to your platform, that would be great. But who makes a good union?
I'll be honest with you, I've been part of different locals within the same international union, within the Teamsters, and I'll be very candid. There's good locals and there's bad locals. And I've had good business agents and I've had bad business agents. But I'm going to tell you one thing. The one thing that makes a good union and a good local union and holds the leadership accountable is the rank and file members, is the workers.
Absolutely.
Without that, there is no strength. There is no strength. It's just a name. It's just a name with a number behind it. But absolutely, with workers, that worker power, that's where the real fear comes in, because your local union leadership, they work at the union hall, you know, and wherever it's located at, the power is on that shop floor or in that schoolroom or in wherever unions are at, because unions are everywhere. They're not just for truck drivers. They're not just for warehousemen. They're not just for dock workers. They're for everyone. You know, if you name the craft, there's a union in it.
And the unions, the teachers' unions have always been strong. And one of the things that people don't understand is that the teachers were negotiating when it was against the law for teachers to even organize. And, you know, that's one of the things that's really important. When the law doesn't support you, you can get solidarity. You change the law. It's not going to change by the people who are in power who don't want you to have power.
Right.
So yeah, so where are the Teamsters going in regard to this? As like you said, there's a convention coming up, and
we got our, you know, we vote for our leadership every 5 years, our top leadership. And, you know, the Teamsters Union has had a history of, and I was just telling Gosha, is pale, stale, and male. You know, it wasn't a reflection of what the rank and file looked like. The rank and file of our organization is LGBTQ plus, is women, Latinx, African American, you name it. I mean, there's now real movement to take over the organization into what it should have been, which is obviously a worker power group mixed in with civil rights group as well. That's what it needs to be like. And I'm so proud of that, because our local union here was the first one to do it, and it's grown. We have an LGBTQ plus caucus here.
Wow.
And, you know, if anyone here is familiar with the Teamsters, it's a male dominated, like I said, pale, stale, and male.
Yeah.
For our local was the first one to say, this is what we're going to do. And we had hundreds of people from around the country come here for the first national meeting of the LGBTQ plus. We have the Hispanic caucus is taking off. Our Teamsters National Black Caucus is taking off. And these different things, all these individuals have met, and they're now forming a leadership team to run for office within the union, which will be next year. And the people that are on it, I know them personally, and it's just a diverse group and people that have a progressive way of thinking. And that's what we need to do. We're having the conversation about the BLM. Where is the Teamsters on BLM? Teamsters haven't put out a memo saying this is where we stand at all, which is upsetting. Like, why aren't we doing that? If we have members that are going to be upset, so be it. Let's have that conversation.
Right.
Let's have that conversation.
That's right. It's the conversation.
Exactly. So I think with this new leadership that's looking to take control of hold on to the reins of our horses, it's going to be a positive thing for us in 2021.
It sounds fabulous. And as you were speaking about, you know, it's a civil rights, is when we made the most advances in our lifetime. maybe not, at yours, maybe, well, the 70s. I mean, the whole civil rights movement had the unions, and very few people know that Martin Luther King got assassinated when he was working for the sanitation workers in Memphis.
Correct.
And one of the things he said is, the only way for blacks, at the time he was speaking mostly for blacks, but blacks always represented anybody who was white.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way for blacks to make it in this country is economically, and that's to be in a union. And he said that over and over again, but that's not what we hear about Martin Luther King when we celebrate Martin Luther King Day.
Right.
And what we were also looked at last week was the WTO that was telling me it's time to end our little thing, but the WTO, the World Trade Organization, in 2000 up in, well, it was 1999, Seattle, when the Teamsters were the biggest union to start coming out and joining the environmentalists and the people who are fighting for people don't even understand about the seeds, that these big companies want to make it illegal for farmers to collect seeds, so that they're called suicide seeds. And they want to do it around the world so that farmers have to buy more seeds every year, so they get poor, so then the agribusiness gets big. And so what we need, or what it was working there and in the civil rights movement, is for all the organizations to come together. And maybe not under one big umbrella, but at least like an octopus, with all these different arms. So I'm so glad to hear about, because I remember pale, stale, and male. I was pale, but I wasn't stale or male when I was in Florida. But I tell you, it was pretty scary to go into a convention hall with pale, stale, and male.
Right.
And to be able to see that, and it just really shows that everything has to reflect our real population.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people feel a part of it, because labor movements has a history of excluding people, but the more we feel a part of it, the more we're going to prosper.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that with everything going on now, it gives me that hope and that inspiration that our movement's going to continue, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the youth taking to the streets, with the millennials and doing what they're doing, reaching out to all kinds of different people and being that voice. What I hope is the unions grab them and embrace them and bring everybody in, because that's that spark. There's a spark of change that's definitely happening. And, I don't want to say it started with the BLM movement. I'll be honest with you. Maybe this is just my opinion. I think it started with the teachers' strike when that first happened, because that was unheard of. And that was started to take nationwide. I was at the teacher strike in LA. And then all of a sudden, because those are our educators, they're teaching this youth, hey, revolutionary action is good. That's how you're going to get change. So now I see that teachers movement progressing into this youth, into the BLM movement, and all these different movements that are going on. And it's because of educators like yourself that get these kids, and they're like, this is what we need to be doing. And like I said earlier, when you're young and you go out and vote and you see these numbers, don't just vote in a presidential election. Like you and I were discussing in the beginning, the White House, it's important to vote in your for president, but it has more of effect, a lot of it on your local stuff, your Congress, your senators, all that stuff is what's super important. We make the mistake of putting our presidents as the almighty power, as they're going to make this change. And, whether you voted for Trump and you're like, I don't know anybody that voted for Trump, but if you did, you're upset and you're like, oh my God, we're going to be communist country and I'm going to have to collect bullets and coffee. That's how I'm going to be trading. You're at this other extreme. And then you have, the people that were invested in Joe Biden and Harris, and they're like, oh, everything's going to be great after January 20th. The grass is going to be greener. No, people. The White House doesn't have a direct effect on your house. The house that has a direct effect on your house is the House of Labor. When you're part of a union and you're in that building workers' rights, you vote on your union contracts. You vote on your union leadership. Your local elections are what are more important because they have direct effect immediately. When you're voting for your mayors, your councilmen, the different measures and propositions, your school boards, those are the things that have direct effect immediately. Those are the things that are important. Those are the things that we have to hold on to. The national stage is great and everything, but if we don't start moving towards those smaller areas, that happens every 4 years. We can't be active every 4 years. It's every 4 years. We can't be active every 4 years. We have to be active every day.
Every day, every day, every day. And I do want to give a shout out because they do tend to get overlooked, and it's because, well, they've been overlooked since the get-so, but the pipeline, the native people who in the blizzards were fighting, and we saw how they were treated by the police, and that was atrocious. And I think that woke a lot of people up too. It started it, and then you had the Me Too movement, then you had the teacher strikes, then you have, I mean, there's something has been boiling. You know, it's almost like a tar pit, if you've ever been down to LA tar pits, you know, where there's something bubbling, and that creates the circles that go out. And I'm so happy that you were willing to do this with me, because you're saying the things, of course, it's my heart too, but we need to be involved in the local things. We need to stand up, and we need to think about our lives and what matters with our life. And it doesn't matter. It does matter who the president is, but then you got to decide who's on the Senate, right, and who's there and who's going to be, and the Supreme Court's really important. But every day it's, where do you make your money? Where do you buy your food? How can you take care of your family? You know, how can you go to school? And those are local issues.
Right. We need to stop waiting on one individual to save us.
Hallelujah. Praise the goddess. Thank you. Yes.
And that's what we do. We're waiting for that superhero to come in and save us, so we could say, okay, we don't have to do the heavy lifting and we don't have to do the hard work. But in order to get the things that we want and to live the life that we want, we have to do that hard work. No one ever tells their kids, oh, don't do nothing. There's going to be somebody that comes along and saves you. Like, we don't tell our kids that, right? We're like, you got to work hard, study your craft, whatever it is you want to do, focus in on that and study, and you work hard. You know, you'll get where you need to get. Nobody ever says, oh, just wait there, don't do anything. Hopefully somebody comes along that you vote for and is going to save you. That never happens. So we have to work at it. It's a constant work in progress, but the end result is always positive.
Well, on that note, I'm going to stop this recording, but I'll still talk to you. Okay. But thank you so much. I mean, I know I see you in your office, and I can't wait till sometime I can come and walk on a picket line or something with you.
Hey, you're always welcome to be on a picket line with me or anywhere. I mean, you're an inspiration, Gosha. Really, I mean that. You know, like I said, I dropped out of high school at a very young age. I wasn't into school, but when I took one of your classes, that passion just to educate and then start teaching my own stewards. So you're the reason I do it, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to end this, but stay